So let's begin by looking at the sketch and the relationship of the elements. So I think it all starts with the focal. So I'm going to take out my handy dandy calipers and measure the height from the tip to the bottom. Compare that to this element, and it's a little bit smaller, and compare it to this element, smaller. Pretty quickly, I'm seeing that these two pieces are exactly the same with rounded corners opposite. If I go widthwise, I've kind of got the same thing. So I've got smaller and smaller. You know what? I've already decided on what this focal is going to be. So let me shift. So to begin with, I decided what I wanted the focal for this card to be. And so I've got a series of punch outs that I've kind of layered, decorated a little bit, but I'm concerned about the outer dimensions. So I've got a 3 and 3¼ inch square. And so I know that the two side pieces have to be smaller. And so I came in with squares of 2 3/4 this way by 2½ And so this way, when I position like so and like so, overlapping like this, and in the sketch it gives a little more room for the sentiment. Let me pull out a little bit. I had to break again because when I change my focus, my camera gets squared away. I've got something like this, which leaves room for the sentiment down here. So that's the focal pretty much figured out per the sketch. So now I want to decide on my card size, and that's going to depend on these pieces. So notice also that I'm using a pattern that sharply contrasts with my backing paper as opposed to using a solid as in this piece. So if I were to position it like this, pop this down, bring this way a little bit to allow for a sentiment, which I have. So I've got a little sentiment that's going to sit here. You know, I don't like that this one is closer to this top, so I'm going to try and even it out a little bit. So it's going to be something more like this. And so that's just kind of making it my own. So I'm going to have the same distance coming over here as here, and that's only because that's kind of my style. I'm mathematically challenged that way. Now for the card base, I have no white in this pattern paper, so from a style, I'm just going to go with this, and I ended up with a 4½ by 6 inch base card, and then I just added this little piece of vanilla paper just to lighten it up a little bit. And so that's going to be my card front. And so I want to talk about these materials because I'm going to put that together and I'm going to come back. These are from Paper Wishes, and they are niblets from a artful card kit called Cider. So I think this design is great for niblets, and along those lines, what I want to do for my Hunky Holics is kind of take a topper that's got no other place to go and prep a card. And also, if you've got niblets from your collections from Hunky Dory, this is Flight of the Butterfly, so this is older, and I've got tons of niblets. And this is when I used to make like one card and put everything else in a baggie. So I'll prep that as well. Okay, let me get this put together and I'll be back. So this is how the first sample turned out, and I did end up squishing it a little bit because when I was positioning, I just wanted more of this background paper, and you know, the 4½ by 6, this could have gone as large as 5 by 7 with the same focal and positioning. So that's it. On the inside, I just added another piece of that paper with some trim, so a little more scraps. Of course, always going to do an envelope. So let's look at the second one where I used that little teddy bear topper from Hunky Dory. So this is the way it turned out. Now these were actually two pieces, so we're going to play with some layering. So I put the frame back behind my two corners. This time I did position out a little bit because these papers are all real the same. I stuck with patterns because I like that cohesive look, and moved the sentiment over to kind of match with the frame because the widths were the same. So again, it comes together really quickly. This has got a lot of gold trimming in it, so matted with gold, and matted my corners with gold as well. Rounded corners, and on the inside, just more patterned papers. Now what I should notice also, because I took some photos of my prep work, but when I am prepping these focals, I am doing it against a grid and then placing it onto my card front. And that's just so that I know it's square, because I'm trying to stick with square at this point. Now this is the other one that I used, the Flight of the Butterflies, And I'll be the first to admit there's almost too much going on. So taking the frame, this is what these frames look like, and if you have the concept cards from Hunky Dory, a lot of times there's a lot of stuff left over because I really don't like the concept cards. So I trimmed off the edges and sliced it and then pushed it together to create my two corners. Like I said, I had to cover up where I spliced, and so just too much going on. I did finish up the interior with just another piece of the adorable scoreable. Okay, let's leave photos of all that. And next we're going to look at some other pieces. Well, actually what I want to do before I leave corners is I want to try another piece from this butterfly. And so what I've got is a really large topper. And so what I'm going to do, instead of using different pieces for corners, I'm going to use a die that cuts into my cardstock. And so it's about the same size, give or take. And so this is going to be my focal. This is going to be the panel. And so I'm going to cut it here and then cut it this way. And then I'm going to have gold show up through it. So photos, and I'll be back. Here's how that project finished out. And so, I mean, if you're looking at the photo and you're saying, well, that doesn't match that. Well, if I turn it this way, actually this way, it kind of does. And so I like to tilt my sketches to make them work for me. And I just love the whole thing. Of course, when you've got a die cut that cuts into your cardstock, you can do some fun things with the inside. So before I leave this, you know, I've mentioned it before, if I had a larger piece. And so the only thing I've done, I've taken the same sort of elements and I created from the sketch a cover for a composition book. So kind of the same deal. I've got the center. I used that same deal for here and here. Got my title down at the bottom, which is featured here. And so now I've got my notebook cover. So let me leave photos of that, and then we'll move into some other materials. If you're a stamper, this sketch also works well for stamps. So instead of having cardstock for these two quarter pieces, I just took a stamp and put it this way. Of course, my focal is going to be kind of stamped and raised up. So I've got some Paper Wishes poinsettia stamps, and they are 3-step stamping. And then my sentiment, you can add what you want to as far as embellishments. This time it's just a piece of twine. The inside, more stamping. So I did that. So now I want to play with this a little bit. And I thought, rather than just some rounded corners, why not put some die cuts in? So I've got another one of those kind of leftover toppers, added some die cuts, really pretty pattern paper, and put this piece together. And that has an insert, so finish it out this way. And lastly, the other thing I want to change is these have been symmetrical, or mirror. They've been mirror images. So what if I got some, in this case, this comes from Kanban, so I've got this pad of, 80 different sentiments. And so let me pick this up so you don't see the flash. And so I took one of them, die cut it, but then instead of having mirrors, I just added more of the same elements. So I've got my teacups here onto foiled. Let me move the envelopes out of the way. And did these pieces. And like I said, I will take photos of that also. So I've got the inside kind of continuing with the whole theme. So it doesn't have to be mirrors. It can just be kind of duplicate images. That's a great way to use some of your stash. And then lastly, the last thing I have is, of course, a scrapbook page. So let's just take a look at this. Of course, this is a long portrait sort of system. And in this scrapbook page, no, actually you can see it all. And I will take a photo of the finished piece, but the same thing. So I've got my two rectangles here on the outside. I've got a sentiment, or in this case, a title. Added some embellishments. I've got my photo in the center, but proportions are pretty much sticking to the same. Anyway, a very versatile sketch, whether you're making cards or you're making notebooks or you're doing scrapbook pages. And I thank you for watching.